I'll be honest, I'm a massive Star Wars fan. I grew up watching the original trilogy, and the prequel trilogy as well. Even at that young age I knew it was terrible. You can tell I had good taste as a kid. So I of course went to the cinema to watch Force Awakens twice. I saw it on the day it first came out in England, and I enjoyed it. It may have been very safe and unoriginal, but it was better than the prequels, which was all that mattered. However, upon rewatching it, I could sense the dark side of the film in the form of the protagonist, Rey. She is a badly written protagonist who drags Force Awakens down a notch in quality. Perhaps you have heard people calling her a Mary Sue. Well, they're not wrong, and I'm going to explain why. Number 1. The plot must go on. Let me ask you something. What can we infer about Rey when we first see her? Well, first she is a loner. From this, we can guess that she knows how to take care of herself. Second, we see her scavenging for technology and gadgets in the former battlefield of Jakku. From this, we can guess that she knows a thing or two about mechanics, engines, and machines. This is why it is not surprising when she pommels several assailants with her quarterstaff, and tries to activate the door valves to shut off the 2 space gangs from capturing Han Solo, Chewie, and BB-8. But quite a few of her abilities are never explained. Never is it mentioned that she can fly, except when she needs to fly the Falcon, and the film never explains how she learnt to fly. All we have seen is a young woman searching for scraps in a battlefield. How does she learn to fly ships? And how does she know more about the Falcon than Han Solo? A second talent of hers, which is not explained, is her proficiency with the Force and the lightsaber. Where did she learn how to fence so capably? I'm sorry, but fighting with this would be very different to fighting with this. And how is she so good with the Force even though she hasn't received any training? There is a theory that she is Anakin reborn or reincarnated, but that still doesn't explain any of this. Anakin was never this good until he'd received training. In fact, even though he was supposedly the most powerful Jedi who existed, he still needed training, and as a kid he was quite limited in his power. And he never knew how to duel very well until Revenge of the Sith, and even then he lost arguably his most important fight. So how is Rey proving to be even better than Anakin Skywalker, without training? Also, can any of you remember Anakin doing any mind tricks? The fact of the matter is that Rey can do all these things because the plot demanded it. The plot needed Rey, Finn, and BB-8 to get off Jakku. Finn already said he couldn't fly, and droids have never historically flown ships in the Star Wars universe, so it had to be Rey. Rey needs to escape from imprisonment, so she suddenly became really powerful with Force to achieve that end. And she needed to defeat Kylo and save Finn, so the plot turned her into a super fighter with the Force as her ally. Simply put, the script made her capable of these things. This is a classic sign that reveals whether a protagonist is a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue, when they can automatically do things, with no explanation, to push the plot forwards, and bring the film to an end of the writer's desire. When your protagonist can arbitrarily do things at the drop of a hat, it rids the tension in any scene, and this is awful. For without tension, the audience gets quickly bored. Even a little smidgen of tension can keep an audience invested, and it makes the victories of your protagonist all that more satisfying when you're aware that they can lose and they have won because of good efforts and good skill. Number 2. I don't need nobody, and I can't lose. Rey is missing something so fundamental to a well-written protagonist that I'm surprised I didn't see it when I first viewed the film. What is this fundamental attribute? Vulnerability. Your protagonist can be many things. He can be a coward, a hero, a badass, or a moron. But whatever protagonist, he or she must be vulnerable in some way or have a weakness, which the villain can exploit. To show what I mean, let us examine Luke Skywalker and his weaknesses and vulnerability in the original trilogy. In Episode 4, he gets bested by sand people and almost gets killed by a creature in the sewage room. In Episode 5, his ship gets shot down. He loses hope when trying to use the Force, gets bested in a fight with Vader, and has his arm cut off. In Episode 6, he gets shot in the hand, miscalculates his ability to persuade Vader to the light, loses his temper, and nearly gets killed by Force lightning from the Emperor. These may be small things, but they do a lot in showing us that Luke is human, and not some unstoppable juggernaut. You've got to have moments where your protagonist is not in control of the situation, and in places where they are vulnerable. This makes them easier to relate to and can make us sympathetic towards a character. Often, the best way to show the vulnerability of a protagonist is to put them in a situation where they've got to be saved by their companions or friends. This not only showcases the vulnerability of your protagonist, but gives side characters purpose and shows how important they are to the story. Let's see if we can find any places where Rey is vulnerable. How about when she's attacked by No wait, she dealt with them herself. How about when she is captured by the First Order? Well, she didn't seem to be in any danger. She beats Kylo's mind-reading force powers, and she breaks herself out. Compare this scene, where she is imprisoned, to the one scene where we see Poe incarcerated. Poe is a mess. He is clearly being tortured, but he has still not given up any information. This shows he is a strong character with some control over his situation. Then Kylo starts using the Force, and we see Poe struggle, and the anguish on his face as he tries to bear the pain and not give them the location of the map. In this scene, we learn that Poe is no weakling, but we also see that his mind is no match for the powers of the Force. He is vulnerable to the Force. What do we learn about Rey? We learn that she is so powerful that she can stand toe-to-toe with a half-trained Sith in Force abilities. She has no vulnerability, and she breaks herself out without much effort. Then, do I have to mention the lightsaber fight again? Finn merely slowed Kylo down. Rey could have dealt with him herself. And she does. Without vulnerability in a character, there is no tension and connection. No tension because we know they can never be stopped or defeated. And no connection because we are made aware of how inhuman they are. Everyone has weaknesses. Anyone can be put into a position where they are vulnerable and not in control. That is why we like characters who reflect us. We want to see that even flawed individuals can win in the end, and against overwhelming odds. Seeing someone who we could never possibly be is just off-putting and alienating. We want to believe that normal people can change the world, even though we can't. Normal people become failed writers and spend their time making videos on YouTube criticising things for a sense of purpose. Wait, what is my picture? Also, the invulnerability of a Mary Sue brings down the significance of the side characters. In this case, Finn. Rey is a character who does not need anyone, and this leaves Finn with little to do. Finn only affected the plot in two ways. The first was saving Poe. Without Poe, it is debatable whether Starkiller Base would have been destroyed. The second was shooting down the TIE fighters that attacked the Millennium Falcon. Otherwise, you could have taken him out of the film and the plot wouldn't have changed. BB-8 could have eventually told Rey that they had to leave the planet, and he had a map to Luke. Han and Chewie could have given her the lightsaber, and attempted to rescue her on their mission to blow up the base. They didn't need Finn to direct them around, as he admits that he was only in sanitation and was relying on the Force. Rey's invulnerability made Finn for the most part a superfluous character, who could have been left out of the film, and it's always a shame when a character doesn't actually affect the plot. And this is why Mary Sues are bad for everyone in a film. Number 3. My only flaw is no flaws. Linking back to my points about character vulnerability, is the importance of flaws in a character. We all want to see humans on screen, not perfect, boring angels. Thus, any well-written character has to have flaws as well as positive attributes. Let's look at Luke in A New Hope as an example. His flaws can basically be attributed to his naivety and inexperience. His curiosity gets him into a fight with a sand person, he gets into a fight in a pub, and boasts to Han that he could fly a ship better than him. He isn't very worldly or streetwise, and this gets him into trouble. These aren't major flaws, by any stretch of the imagination, but they are flaws nevertheless, which show him to be human, and gives us something to relate to. What does Rey have? Well, she's scared of becoming a Jedi, and is foolish enough to think her parents are going to come back for her. But these are not so much character flaws, as more natural reactions to bad experiences. Anyone would be scared if they touched a strange object and it started showing them visions. And what is a child supposed to believe if their parents just leave them? That their parents didn't love them? Or that they are just going away for some time and will come back? I know what I'd believe if I was a child and abandoned by my parents. Or what I'd prefer to believe. By the end of the film, she has accepted her destiny and has got over waiting for her parents. So even if you were to class these as character flaws, they are dealt with too quickly and without any meaningful depth to be important. If your protagonist is to defeat their flaws, then they must fight to change themselves, or have an epiphany. It is usually best to have that process happen over the entire film, or take place over a whole scene, not to be resolved in a rushed manner just in time for the next battle scene. A character without flaws is not relatable, and just uninteresting to watch, because the audience knows that they can't be wrong. Sometimes we want to see our characters make mistakes. It can be a useful way of building tension. Are the plans of our protagonist going to work? Or is there something they haven't accounted for? The villain seems pretty intelligent. Will he outsmart them? Having a flawless character just means that they will always get their way no matter what, and breeds predictability. Number 4. How did this happen? All these things, limitless and unexplained talents, lack of vulnerability and flawlessness, are big red flags that your character might be a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue. When all 3 of these things are present in a character, then they definitely are one. Full stop. Upon seeing a Mary Sue in a film, I would be tempted to blame it on bad writing. However, the writers have good track records. Lawrence Kasdan co-wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and was the screenplay writer for Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And J.J. Abrams wrote and directed Super 8, which was a very good film, so these writers are not incompetent. It's possible they just weren't paying attention while writing this film, but that honestly doesn't seem plausible in my opinion. I can't imagine anyone being unfocused while writing a Star Wars film. I have a theory as to why Rey is a Mary Sue, and I know some of you are not going to like this, but I believe it has everything to do with social justice and the presence of progressivism in the film industry. And no, I'm not saying this because it has become hip to criticise progressives. I'm saying this because I legitimately think this is the reason. Social justice warriors have complained for years that women in films always need men to save them. Whether the woman is a damsel, soldier, or in some other profession, they always need men to help them. Hollywood has not been deaf to these complaints, and J.J. Abrams happens to be a big social justice warrior. No doubt, when writing this script, Abrams was being careful to make sure that Rey did not need a man. This is probably why he made sure that Rey friend-zoned Finn, and had her break out of imprisonment by herself. Because heaven forbid that she be saved by a group of males. That would be like so sexist. And it's the current year! Whether Abrams' writing of Rey as a character was influenced by the idea that she shouldn't need a man's help or not is irrelevant, as the outcome is the same. Rey is a boring and bland Mary Sue. By not needing Finn's, Han's, Chewie's, or anyone's help for that matter, she is a boring character, who the audience cannot feel for or connect with. She is destined to win every fight in a tensionless and predictable manner. I have hope that in Episode 8 they will develop her character and address the problems I have listed. But I guess we shall have to wait and see whether Disney and Lucasfilm like listening to random YouTubers give their opinions. Thanks for watching.